Marcus Aurelius said, "He who has vehement desire for posthumous fame does not consider that every one of those who remember him will himself also die very soon. Then again, also they who have succeeded them, until the whole remembrance shall have been extinguished as it is transmitted through men who foolishly admire and perish. You reject unseasonably the gift of nature, clinging to something else." Sometimes I think about how easy it is for us to become passively frustrated with things that maybe aren't going our way, or maybe it's not even things that aren't going our way. Maybe it's things that we fear won't go our way in the future. And so we have that passive sense of worry and frustration about things that worry us beyond our control. And yet, the moment is often pleasant enough. Life is reasonably good as it is. Many times in life, we don't have a lot of reason to be frustrated about what's going on at this specific moment. In the specific moment we're in, we might find that life is good and it's a beautiful day. It's an enjoyable day. We're able to do all the things that we want to do. And really, there's nothing wrong at all. But when we start to think about what's going to happen next week and what's going to happen for the rest of the year, and if we're going to get our way, or if things aren't going to work out the way we hope for them to, then life starts to become a lot more frightening, a lot more bleak, a lot more discouraging and frustrating. So there's a lot of virtue in just learning how to allow yourself to enjoy the life you have right now. Don't feel like you have to somehow figure out everything that's going to happen, because all you really have to worry about is this moment that we have right now. And usually we do have the strength we need to face and handle and even enjoy our lives in the present. But there's also something to be said for kind of looking in the face of the universe and saying, bring it on. It is what it is. I think about how we're all going to perish, and it doesn't really matter in many ways. It doesn't matter if our lives go the way we want them to, or if they don't go the way we want them to. In the end, it is what it is. And when we understand that there isn't really any logic in being afraid of death and in feeling like there's some sort of a benchmark we have to achieve before we wrap things up, when we let go of those assumptions that we're entitled to something or that we must do something in order to validate our existence or to be able to rationally allow ourselves happiness, then instead of asking the question, is life going the way I want it to, we just ask the question, what is the truth? And maybe it is going as we wish, or maybe it's not, and it doesn't really matter, because you start to look at life by the metric of saying, I'm a steward of this. I'm a temporary inheritor of something which I'm not going to take with me when I go. You surrender a certain degree of ego, and that is the path to harmony and peace. I think about how we have problems in the world which are the result of what you might consider to be the human condition. And we wonder, what do we do about those things? But if you really think about it, most of the problems in life are the result of excessive ego. Think about, in 1999, there was the Columbine school shooting, and that was a really infamous event, which made people think a lot about safety in public spaces. And of course, that was by far not the only instance of school violence or public mass shootings or anything like that, which have continued to plague our society for years to come. I was reading about this in the year 2000 Time magazine year in review, and I was thinking about how crazy it is. We were talking about this 25 years ago, and we're still talking about it today. It's the same basic thing going on, and people just debate all the time. You know, what do you do about this? You know, is it gun control that we need? Is it some sort of social reform that we need? What is it that makes people do terrible things to each other? And the more I think about it, though, the more I sort of see the same trend across a lot of different kinds of people. We see it in any place where there's an ego-driven individual. There's that sense that people think they're entitled to a certain quality of life. And if they don't get that quality of life, then they feel angry. They feel betrayed. Maybe they feel like people bully them. Maybe they feel like they try hard and they don't get recognized for their efforts. Maybe they just feel like other people are more successful than they are and flaunt it. And that's actually true. People have all sorts of passive-aggressive tendencies to have an ego-driven approach to life. People are always comparing themselves to each other. They're always trying to virtue signal to show that they're doing something perhaps better than their neighbors, that they're having a moral high ground versus someone else, or they're trying to brag because they have more physical things, or they're physically superior to someone else. We have so many levers in our society which encourage and reward people for having an ego-driven approach to life. Instead of questioning whether we're doing what's right, we question whether we're doing better than the next person in line. And so it perhaps isn't a surprise that people in a society which views the value of a human being on a basis of an ego-driven value statement starts to have the problem where if people don't get their way, they feel like their life just isn't worth it. And then they feel resentment, and so they start to have that attitude that if they can't have a good life, then they don't really want anyone else to have a good life either. Even if you exclude extremists or radicalized people, we see this trend a lot. There's a lot of people who have a desire to get ahead in life. They want to be successful in life. But if they don't get their way, then suddenly they pretty much shut down and they stop being interested in the well-being of others, because it's not really about other people. It's that they'll attempt to appear to be benevolent if they're getting their way, but as soon as they don't get their way, then they really just don't want anything to do with service at all anymore. So I guess it all boils down to, if you let go of your ego, you can have a path to personal peace. But letting go of ego does more than just give you a sense of peace of mind. It also helps you to avoid being one of those people who has a streak of cruelty in them. And I often think about all the bad things that people do. When someone goes rogue and they do some sort of domestic violence, or they engage in violence in public, or harm others. And the tendency is to think, well, you know, other people are like that. I'm not like that. But I also believe that we all are like that. To some degree, we all have some resentments. We have frustrations. We have passive aggressive streaks. We have the tendency to marginalize other people when we think that we can get ahead by doing so. We tend to lash out when we don't get our way. And yet, we will all be forgotten in the end. Even if we're remembered, it really doesn't do anything to prove our value, because we will be forgotten. Even if we're remembered, it's not really our ego that's remembered. Maybe it's something we wrote. Maybe it's something that inspired somebody else, if we're lucky. But we aren't really going to be remembered in 1,000 years. So all of the things that you look at and you think, you know, if I don't meet this benchmark in life, or if I don't get this thing I want, or whatever it might be, you know, in 1,000 years, no one's going to care. One of the guys that wound up killing a bunch of people 25 years ago in this article I was reading was somebody who had some stock market losses. You know, he was frustrated because he lost money in the markets, and so he went into a brokerage firm and he killed a bunch of people in there because, I guess, you know, he's having a grown man temper tantrum because he invested some money and lost it. Sometimes I think the best thing that a person could possibly have is to not get their way. I remember I was interviewing for a job a while ago, and I said to the manager who was interviewing me for this job, I said, you know, I've heard that your facility is not an easy one to work in, and you're not an easy person to work for. And, you know, I was going to be starting off as a salaried manager for the first time at that point. So I said, you know, would it be better maybe for me to hold off and apply for a job in maybe a different facility that is a little bit less complex? I remember he said, you know, you're going to face adversity in life, and you're better off to accept that now and learn how to deal with adversity on a small scale today than you are to make your way through years of your life and career and then eventually face adversity, but you'll be in a place at a higher level where you don't have any resources to work through it. And if you aren't ready and you don't understand how to handle that, then it'll do you in, because you will have never learned how to handle that. You know, I think that's also true in life, though. Sometimes we kick the can down the road, and people who manage to avoid adversity, maybe they never have to go through that experience of not getting their way in life, or, you know, being told no, or maybe they just never figure out how to come to terms with the fact that life is filled with moments where you don't get your way. Then at some point they wind up doing something bad, and they become manipulative or abusive or unkind or even dangerous, because they never learned that not getting your way in life doesn't mean that something's broken. It's just part of how life works. So focus not so much on trying to win the day, win the battle, always come out ahead. Focus more on letting go of your ego and saying, you know, it's okay if I don't get my way. It's okay if life doesn't work out the way I wanted it to, because life has loveliness to offer today, and we're better off to have a good day and not worry so much about whether our life is going to work out the way we want, than we are to always spend our time being anxious and never really enjoying the beauty of the day. Somebody in a TED Talk said that anxiety is actually what's dangerous to people, not so much stress. And I thought that was interesting. And it's kind of true, right? Because you could experience stress while you're playing your favorite arcade game. You're experiencing stress because you're trying to win and you're playing this game and the stakes are high and you know, that could be stress, right? But it could also be a very pleasurable experience. I never would say that I experienced negative emotions while playing a game of Tetris or something like that. And so it's not really about trying to live a life completely devoid of stress. It's more about having a life which is filled with a sense of meaning. Meaning in the sense that you can have stress, but you don't necessarily have anxiety. You can have hardship, but not necessarily have discouragement. And if you believe that what you're doing is part of a positive experience as a whole, then you're less likely to experience the negative elements of mental health, which are associated with anxiety. And so I think it's important for us to kind of stop and question, you know, why are we doing the things that we're doing? What is the goal of our life? Is the goal of our life to be able to get bragging rights about something, or is the goal of life to enjoy it for its own sake? Because we truly, deeply believe that life is a privilege and an honor to experience in all of its forms. As always, strive to be happy in whatever you do, even if life is not necessarily easy sometimes. Always try to find meaning despite all of the adversity that you experience. And remember that it's okay to sometimes feel frustrated or hurt or to be dismayed because something doesn't go your way. That's a normal experience. Don't try to fight it. Just embrace it, feel it, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Because life is too short for us to feel like it's broken. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching.